Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm gonna be reacting to a video called Europe Ruined America for Me. Okay, well this sounds quite dramatic. Hopefully it's gonna be a positive thing though. I don't know. Let's check it out and comment, like and subscribe.
I didn't care much for pineapple when I was a kid. I thought it was bland in the grand scheme of fruits. But then I had a pineapple in Costa Rica where they actually grow it, and my lord, nothing is better. Now the canned stuff you see lopped onto a hotel breakfast buffet practically makes me gag. And that, sports fans, is what living in Europe for 10 years did to America for me. Let me explain. If you're new here,
please.
Hey, thanks for being here. Swell of ya. My name is Joe Bauer, an American immigrant who's been living in Europe for the past decade and wandering around the world even longer, trying to close the gap between the story we're told and what's actually out there. In this video, I'm going to share how living in Europe has ruined the United States for me.
Sounds so awful if you put it like that.
Growing up in the US, particularly the so-called heartland of America, the constant thumping of best country ever, either verbally or subconsciously by our politicians and media, leave you assuming that the sentiment must
I think even in school, it's a little bit of the undertone.
be true. It's ingrained in you before you can even conceive of life beyond US borders. So that's what I assumed. The US must be the best country because, you know, it just is. The tides go in and out, the earth rotates around the sun, and the Cleveland Browns will find new and unique ways to lose games. It's just another law of the universe. Now, to be fair, you don't know what you don't know. We're not generally taught that many people who live outside of the United States are happy with where they live. The general narrative we get is that everyone wants to come to the US. We saw that presumptuous bravado play out with the latest Greenland nonsense when Ted Cruz claimed Greenlanders would say, "Hell yeah," to becoming American citizens. Except they don't want to become American citizens, which is something I'll dive deeper into my next video covering my recent week traveling around Greenland. So, you know, stay tuned. It wasn't until I started traveling the world, ironically thanks to the privilege of an American passport, that I started to realize both that best country is highly subjective and that other countries inarguably do certain things better. In some cases, much better. I remember traveling to Switzerland for the first time about 12 years ago, crisscrossing the country by bike and train.
Beautiful place.
Something you simply cannot do in the US. Or, for the person
well, there's the Amtrak, but nobody uses that.
inevitably getting ready to yell in the comments, Switzerland is the size of a small US state. You can't do it in a small US state either. There's
Again, yes, sure. I mean, you sort of can, but it's not really the same thing.
a bit from How I Met Your Mother, one of the few that haven't aged horribly, where glass shatters every time someone realizes something for the first time.
You're always correcting people.
That's absolutely right.
That trip to Switzerland was the first of many glass-shattering moments from Europe that's ruined America for me. Moving here and traveling even more has only made it worse. Now, when I lived in Dusseldorf, I could
Yes, because the more you understand about the world and the more you know things and the more you travel, the more your eyes are open. So the more you realize, you know, again, the things that you didn't know, now you know. Welcome to living.
easily and safely cycle to the Netherlands, take regional trains to villages in the countryside, ride a high-speed train to France or Belgium, a night train to Vienna, or transfer in Munich to slip south to Austria or Italy.
That's
Even
incredible.
from Berlin, I can easily get to Denmark, Czechia, Hungary, or within about an hour on the train, Poland. This isn't just great for
because
travel,
you're so close.
It's great for flexibility when working remotely. Just last week, I took the train from Copenhagen to Berlin after my week in Greenland because my flight was canceled. In the US, I'd be absolutely screwed. I'd have to rent a car and basically lose a workday driving.
Well, including the idea of you have to go either to what, Canada or Mexico. Those are your only two countries that you border. So again, what do? Do you drive all the way to Canada or Mexico? Again, depending on where you are, that's not a feasible thing.
But here, I
That's
could
not a
just
viable
hop
option.
on the train. It was about an 8.5-hour journey. Basically a workday on the train, which, you know, as a side note,
Where? Oh, was Copenhagen to what? To Germany? I mean, that's 8 hours of flight. That's a lot. Well, it's the same as a flight. Yes.
wildly productive on a train. I think I wrapped up like 3 articles I had due for editors, and it really would have screwed up my week if I lost that time. Not to mention, spending that amount of time in a car would push me to the brink of insanity. After having that kind of ease of connectivity for the past decade, I simply can't look at the US the same
You can't. Yeah, of course. In Europe, you can't really beat that. Of
way
course.
again. Because all I see when I look at a map are the ghosts of train lines that used to exist and think of the decades of missed opportunity.
Wait, what? Let me go back.
Are the ghosts.
What is this? Oh my god, they're the extinct. Oh my god, they're railway lines. I didn't know that. Well, yeah, of course, maybe this is from what, the 1800s. That was the only way they could move around. That's crazy. They had so many.
Of train lines that used to exist and think of the decades of missed opportunities to make things better. Case
Yeah.
in point, we're planning a big trip around the western United States.
Actually, I'm wondering how come they just made it, it fell out of style, because technically the railways were already there. So I don't know, just update this. I don't know, it was the cars thing, probably.
To check out some national
Nah.
parks, most likely connecting Las Vegas, Salt Lake City, Boise, and Portland. They're the largest cities in their respective states, each about
Yes.
4 to 6 hours of driving apart. My European eyes can't help but expect there to be trains connecting these places. Here,
No.
I can take a high-speed train from Berlin to Munich, the same distance as Salt Lake City to Boise, in about 4 hours, with Wi-Fi while working. What transit options that do
Wow.
exist in the western region of the US are multiple buses at just about double the driving time.
Yeah, but not.
Hardly the stuff of the best country on earth.
No. And the bus thing is not the same as a high speed
The US
train.
is, financially speaking, a wealthy country. Now, rather than using $200 billion to fund an illegal war, it could give a tiny fraction of that amount to improving the lives of everyday Americans by, I don't know, as just one example, improving transportation alternatives. But what it can't do is something that's inherent to the very fabric of Europe, and that is hold together a mosaic of different languages, cultures, and histories. One of my absolute favorite things about living in and traveling around Europe is the linguistic and cultural diversity of the continent. When I'm doing
That's great.
those cycling trips from Dusseldorf or the international train trips out of Berlin, I'm diving into a place with a completely different language, culture, and history. That was another glass-shattering moment for me. Just
It's sort of shared, but at the same time it isn't, right? It's all part of something bigger, but everything's very distinct when you come, when it's smaller. So it's
how
great.
much I value this kind of accessible diversity. Now, don't get me wrong, the US is home to loads of unique and interesting cultures. The Midwest
But it's not the same, because it's still the same country. In Europe, you have a bunch of them.
is different than the Northeast, which is different than the Southeast, and
Yes,
so on.
but still part of
the
the big-
degree of those differences is a fraction of what you experience living in Europe. Going
Because there are states and regions, and the other are actual literal countries. Of course, it isn't the same.
from my
thing.
hometown of Cleveland to, let's say, next door Pennsylvania just isn't as thrilling as going to Poland from Berlin. And it simply never will be. No offense to Pennsylvania. I love Pittsburgh, the Allegheny River, the
But it's not the
Allegheny
same
Mountains.
thing.
It's all beautiful stuff, so please don't attack me with one of those massive
No, of
Primanti
course
Brothers
not.
sandwiches. My love and now expectation for that kind of diversity is 100% Europe's fault, and there's nothing the US can do about that. Unless, and I'm just spitballing here, someone invents a time machine, goes back in time, stops Native American genocide. Though civilizations continue to grow, they allow a reasonable amount of European immigration, but, with limits, of course, because you can't just have them pouring across Cherokee, Navajo, or Choctaw borders taking their jobs, and then you're left with the same kind of cultural mosaic that we have today in Europe, and instead of, dances with wolves, we'd have, I don't know, dances with clogs or something.
It's a lot to unpack. I mean, that was a huge thing. A lot of things to unpack. I'll skip right to it. Actually, I'm not getting into that.
In the US, unemployment is viewed shamefully. It's one of the sins spelled out on
It's
Mel
true.
Brooks' third tablet that his Moses dropped.
What?
There's little empathy for folks who, for one reason or another, can't find work. Boomers especially are fond of shaking their head, muttering, "Why don't you just get a job?" As if they're just being handed out by the job fairy.
Yeah, get a job. Oh, get a job? Yeah. Just get a job? Why don't I strap on my job helmet and squeeze down into a job cannon and fire off into Jobland, where jobs grow on jobbies?
In Germany, and I imagine most of the European Union, unemployment is viewed differently. We have higher taxes, yes, but that helps fund the social safety net that gives recently unemployed folks financial breathing room if they lose their job.
And a lot of people in some countries actually do not like this. So
Or it's not entirely uncommon for someone to voluntarily leave their job just to make some time for themselves, maybe travel, or do something else that doesn't revolve around work.
Again,
all
it
the while
depends.
collecting some form of unemployment. The American mind couldn't imagine such a thing.
It's
I
social
couldn't
welfare
imagine it
now.
myself until I lived here. But in Germany, unemployment is viewed as a kind of insurance policy that you recoup whenever you need it. It's your money you're taking back. But in the US, a
As it
social
should be.
safety net is the kind of thing for commies and their commie polyamorous thruples. In a country where many people are living paycheck to paycheck, leaving your job for any number of reasons is seen as too risky. So
Because
you might
you
find
can.
yourself trapped as opposed to feeling free to explore other opportunities or maybe even starting your own business.
Yeah, that's
Glass
the reality.
officially shattered.
Well, also, actually, I think starting a business in Europe actually is not really that easy either. But yeah,
None of this
They
is to
lied.
say that Europe is better
They
than the
lied.
United States. That kind of
Oh.
thinking is entirely subjective, whether you truly
course.
believe the United States is the greatest country on earth, or you wouldn't step foot there if someone paid you. But these glass-shattering moments that living in and traveling around Europe has given me has changed how I see the United States as it relates to the rest of the world. It gave me perspective. It showed me that the American way isn't the best way, it's just one way. It also sucks, to be honest, because as American, you feel like someone lied to you when the glass shatters, and you realize that other places are doing certain things better, or at least more effectively. But because so many of our leaders believe that America is the best country on earth, they refuse to learn from other places. Don't get me
That's
wrong,
true.
I don't mind a little confident bravado every now and then. It works for some of the best athletes out there, but you gotta back that shit up. Imagine if after Muhammad Ali said he was the
and feedback is always good. So yes, you have to be open-minded about a lot of things.
greatest, he went out there and got pummeled by a 5th grader with weak bones. Perhaps most frustrating of all, US leadership by and large would seem more likely to just give me a Men in Black brain wipe rather than try and make itself better.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you will, look right here.
The US is the greatest country on earth. Kid Rock is a national icon. Tex-Mex is better than Mexican. So yes, Europe ruined America for me. Living and traveling around here showed me that the US isn't the best in many respects, certainly in ways I care about. I can't unsee that, and I certainly can't imagine life without it. But Europe isn't the only region dropping life lessons on my lap. In this video, I share 8 places from around the world that completely changed my American worldview. The last place is technically 2, so hopefully that's an intriguing enough tease that you'll make the algorithm happy and make with the clicky click.
Yeah, it's funny because yes, of course the title is very, it ruined America, yeah, but not in a bad way, I wouldn't say, because it's more in a good way, right? It just is very eye-opening, but throughout the whole video, obviously he has a very interesting perspective and he offers some really important things and points of view. But I was just thinking about how many people I think are, and of course this is all, on the American side, how many Americans actually do sort of believe that in a way, believe all the things. And because, again, he felt like, oh, I was lied to. I don't know if lied is the right word, just because there's, again, if people do believe that, is it really a lie? That's just your reality, right? Because whether or not you haven't had the experience to, go outside and just go and experience how things work in some other places, or you just fell into the whole, again, because you're being sort of indoctrinated to think, United States, greatest country on earth. So you've been, again, that's sort of your mindset, but it's not necessarily that, I've been purposely lied to. It's just a lie, maybe lie that is spread around and, throughout years and decades and all that. But again, it's not necessarily, it's, I'm going to lie to people and I'm going to be, the greatest country on earth, it's the US. And then I'm going to laugh when they're, behind their back. No, again, it's not a malicious thing with it. It's just something that people just, they spew because that's the only thing they know. And of course, if that's your reality, that's always going to be the thing that you're just going to spread around, because again, that's only your reality and you're not really thinking sort of beyond that, or you're not thinking, maybe there are other things or other, there's another sort of way of thinking. So again, it's not necessarily, I wouldn't say, you've been purposely lied to. Not necessarily, because if people are believing that, that's just their reality. But I was thinking about how many people, again, this is just one person out of a sea of hundreds or probably millions of people. And sadly, I think that's the reality for a lot of Americans. They just don't really get the opportunity to experience life sort of outside of the US, because again, they're just thinking, they live in their little, sort of in their little barn. And this is, you're living in your barn in your tiny village, in your tiny town. And you believe, the things, how things work in my little town is how they work, everywhere else, outside of the city or, in the big city and outside of the world or even my country. it's something that sounds, again, this is a really weird metaphor, but I see it a little bit of that, like that. If you haven't really gone outside, if all your life you've lived inside this little barn, and you know you have your little town and everything's sort of provided, and you don't really feel the need to go outside and explore. Hey, what's outside my town? You know, I'm wondering what's beyond the limits of what my eye can see. You know, what's after, what are the other towns? What are, you know, what this country is like? If you haven't really experienced that, and whether that's because of a lack of interest on your behalf, or whether or not, or whether maybe it's, again, the way you were raised. Again, some people have a lot of limitations. So again, I'm not putting, you know, the blame on people. I'm just saying it's because, again, it's not really just something good or bad. I would argue it just is, and that's it. That's just a reality. It's not necessarily bad. It's not necessarily good. It's just simply is. But I was thinking, so how many Americans do suffer from this? And, you know, he like he was mentioning, you know, it wasn't until I went out of my little town, I went out of the US and checked out how other people lived. He mentions this trip to, I think it was Switzerland, that he realized, oh my God, you know, the world can be quite different, right? So it is kind of crazy, because it sounds a little, and I think, again, to a European, this probably sounds so silly, because it's sort of, how do you not grow up realizing there's so many other cultures, there's so many other countries, and there's world outside your little barn, and there's worlds, millions of worlds outside your little town. That I think for the average American, that's not really a thing, that's not really a given. And sadly, again, that's just the reality for a lot of people. And I was just thinking about this. Oh my God, I'm wondering how many Americans, because I guarantee it's over half of American citizens, are just completely unaware that things are done some in other ways in different places, and there's just this whole other world outside. If you only, you know, again, maybe it's not feasible. I think I understand that as well. It's not necessarily sometimes about wanting, because a lot of people maybe want to, and there's this thing about, yes, you know, want to go outside, and I want to experience how the other half lives, or how other people are living. And sometimes it's not really, again, the reality. Maybe some people, again, because I think the whole American culture doesn't make it, like he mentioned, for instance, the work thing, you're constantly concerned about unemployment, for instance. So it's not as if I can just, throw everything out of the window by, I'm moving to Europe for a year and just figure things out. Again, maybe I understand that's not really a feasible option for a lot of people. But, you know, sometimes it's maybe, again, go to the internet, maybe. Again, sometimes it's not physically as you can go, and, you know, maybe, and meet probably other people. But it's really a gift. I think Europeans do not realize how probably, again, you take this a little bit for granted. This sort of, this connectivity as well, of I can go to a different country. You know, I can, you know, get on a flight, and, you know, half an hour later, or again on a train, and an hour later, 2 hours later, be in a completely different country with another language, another different culture, and how connected I think everything is, and how different I think other cultures are from your own culture. And that's really, again, that's a given. And I don't think Europeans realize how lucky they are, because, again, that's a reality. So because it's your reality, you're not realizing, oh my God, we are actually quite lucky. But I think that's one of the good things about videos like this. It's really eye-opening to see, again, how it's the opportunity to actually switch around and see how other people are living, and realizing, oh my God, actually we are very lucky to be able to experience this, and realize there's just so many, you know, you're up thinking and knowing and probably experiencing so many other cultures and so many other people, so many other places that a lot of Americans sadly cannot experience, and they have to wait until they actually become adults, and you know, and they go through this whole process, this eye-opening process of, you know, confronting the actual reality of most people, I think, outside of the US, and then again with their own sort of reality, what they've been told their whole lives. So again, it's kind of insane, but that's really how it is. And I think videos like this really do sort of, oh my God, yeah, they really does paint a picture on how the average American actually lives. But if it's good news, is I think with the internet and all of that, I think there's probably more people like him that are able to sort of go and experience other cultures, and go and experience, oh my God, things are probably not as they seem. And there's I don't have to stay only with what they're telling me, what, you know, the school, because he mentions, well, it's sort of not subjective. It's just sort of, again, I'm saying the word indoctrinated, and maybe it's a little harsh, but it is true that you know, what he says about you grow up being told the U.S. is, you know, the greatest country on earth, and people, you know, other countries are trying to replicate us, and everyone wants to come here, and again, they want to achieve the American dream because that's the dream, and that's what everybody wants to be us. And it's funny because, again, that's what people are they're telling you that ever since you're a child, and not necessarily in those words, but that's really actually the underlying of a lot of things and a lot of behaviors and a lot of things that people say and all of that. That's really what they're going at. They're hinting at this. Oh, greatest country, it's the best, and all of that. So it's really, I think, again, when you sort of, again, you grow up, or maybe, again, someone puts it into perspective, and then you realize, oh, wait, you know, things are not really as they seem. And, you know, the whole, oh, everyone wants to be us. You realize a bunch of countries don't really even think about you. That's just a sad reality. I think you grew up, you know, the average American grows up being told, you know, they're the lead, you know, they're the protagonist, they're the lead in this big motion picture. And then, you know, the reality is that, oh, you're not even 3 on the call sheet. It's not even like that. It's a lot of people are not even, no, I don't want to go to the US, like you mentioned. Maybe that's a little bit extreme. I wouldn't go to the US if they paid me, even if they paid me. But I know some people probably do exist that they have that mindset, that most people are not going to be, you know, that extreme. But it's really funny that, oh yes, we're the elites, everyone wants to be us, when it's really nobody's thinking about you. Everyone's really busy in their own lives, in their own, you know, in their own thing. So there's not really about this. And as you know, for the most shocking thing, one of the most shocking things about this video that I would love to see, is, you know, he was mentioning how, of course, he got used to the whole European brain. Oh, you know, we have to take the train, and how incredible, again, the connectivity in Europe. It's incredible. I don't know if that could be replicated I know that you can't, because again, in Europe, you have so many other countries. And it's not just, again, you have the trains, and, you know, you have, you know, do they have buses? But I think it's more about trains. Of course, why would you take the bus if you have a high-speed train? But, you know, it's the trains, and it's the flights, and it's everything, right? But my point is that, yes, you know, there's, you know, by the way, you know, because that's just, you know, how the world works and how Europe works. Because you have so many countries that are sort of, you know, all piled together. It's really that sort of connectivity that you can go and, again, go to Serbia, and then you take a train, and then 8 hours later you are in, I don't know, Denmark, which is a really different place from that one. Again, that kind of thing could never be replicated in the US. Not even, I mean, even if they try, let's assume tomorrow, you know, government says, yes, we're going to do this. You know, this is our high priority, which probably it shouldn't, right? But, you know, in the future, maybe it would, right? I don't know. But it's impossible, because, again, in the US, because it's so massively big and the territory is just very big, you go and you build this high-speed train. Yes, let's go 8 hours. And 8 hours, maybe, again, you start from Florida, maybe, you know, 8 hours, and then in a high-speed train, it would take you to, I don't know, Tennessee. So it's not even, no, I'm still sort of in the same country. And even though they're different cultures, even though, you know, again, maybe they have some similarities, it's not really the same, right? And I know some people do argue about, you know, because the U.S. is so big, and it has so many different territories and so many other cultures. You know, the southern U.S. is not the same, you know, culturally wise, and of course, you know, the architecture, the way of life, and it's just, you know, the cities are really not the same as, I don't know, the Midwest or, you know, the Pacific Northwest. He was mentioning this. Yes, of course, they're not really the same, but you can't really compare that to countries in Europe, because, again, they're different countries. They're not cities. They're not different states. Even just the language barrier, that really makes it so completely different, because, again, it's just in the US, you drive and everyone, again, speaks English, because that's, again, it's the same country. In Europe, it's not really like that. And even though the more likely, again, some countries do speak obviously the same language. I mean, let's put as an example the UK. again, you can drive and yes, you can go to Scotland and England and, you know, Ireland, and they're not, they're part of the same, again, they're part of the United Kingdom. And people do speak the same language, but they have different cultures. So because they're different countries. So maybe that would be the one that's really more similar to the US in that sense, as in they share this big cultural thing, but at the same time, the more you go around it, they all have so wildly different things and wildly different cultures and wildly different histories that, again, it's more sort of the one that's closer to the US, but still, it's so massively different because, again, you can't compare, the history of one country, again, Ireland or Scotland or Wales, to, again, the story behind, Ohio and, Arizona is not really the same. So it will never be the same, even though, oh yeah, sure, they create these high-speed trains and all that. It's just you're never going to get that because you need that sort of cultural exchange to be able to achieve this. And the US is just really big. So again, it's a good news on one hand, but the bad news is that this kind of thing, it's impossible to replicate. But I would like the idea of creating this high speed trains that would take you, from one end to the other, it takes you from the east to the west in, 4 hours, 3 hours. It would be great, right? That I want to know about the whole line situation. How come? Because they had a lot of them, apparently. They had a lot of railways. What happened? Cars happened. Yes, I know. But why? Why did they fell so completely out of style? There's gotta be an actual sort of answer to this, because in Europe it was the same, right? I mean, cars weren't invented. Well, yes, I know that they were invented in the US, right? I think it was Ford, right? However it is, that my point is that cars were invented, in one place, but then they increased, it was popular, so everyone started using cars. But it wasn't just in the US, in Europe, that was also the case. Well, unless you were in this really, really small village, but I would assume the US was the same. So again, what happened? How come Europe was like, no. We're not going to completely replace, we're not going to replace everything with cars. And how come the US was, no, we're completely replacing everything. I'm wondering if it's a cultural thing, because I know that obviously Europe, because it's older, probably it has more to do with, we have to, traditions are being kept. And it's because this is the way that we have been doing things for so many years. We're not just going to switch it overnight. And maybe the US was, no, new technology, adapting this right away, destroy all the railways, here's a car. So I would actually love to know how come that cultural it's a cultural shift, right? I don't know if it's a cultural shift, but I would love to know how that worked, because I think that's really, I don't know, we'd like to know what happened, because, oh my God, we can see the bones were there. So maybe sometime in the future, maybe they'll take it back. I don't know. And that was it for today, and I'll see you soon. Bye.